Following on from my last video about dealing with the difficulties of having Asperger's syndrome and becoming the man I am today, I would like to cap off this mini-series of some sort by talking about the time I went from the biggest crier in my whole school to learning how to control my emotional outbursts. And this really happened when I hit puberty. Let me begin. It was a short amount of time before I was joining reception and I was 4 years old. My mum grabs my hand from my nursery and walks me straight to my primary school. I walk up the stairs, turn around, and I vividly remember this in my mind, with my photographic memory. Walking into the classroom, and the first thing I see is Harry showing me how to turn on the projector and turn it off again. And I thought, wow, is this what I get to do in primary school? Little did I know, that wasn't quite what we were going to do. But that day, we drew stories, we played with the sand, and we drew with colour pen. Reception was such a blast, man. We literally did nothing. Considering what I was learning only 10 years later in school, I had come a long way. But one problem that was prevalent here was that there were too many people around me and I couldn't deal with it. All these new people overwhelmed me, and having too many people around me as a small kid with Asperger's syndrome, it set something off in me. I started crying. I hated it. I literally couldn't cope. I literally couldn't control my behavioural patterns here. I was too young to. And I started to cry and cry and cry. And this used to happen every week. I would have an instance where I was colouring in on my piece of paper a nice green leaf. And then I would snap the lead of the pen and it wouldn't work anymore. And then my primal brain would say, oh, keep going. And I would try to use the pen further. And all it was doing was pressing broken wood chips into the paper, and then I tore it and I completely lost it. I was crying and crying and crying. I couldn't help it. And my LSA was there sitting by my side, my learning support assistant. And then quite cruelly, she suggested that she would bring out her camera and record me. I have no idea why she did this. Like telling a child in distress you would record their reactions. I'm pretty sure she faked it because there was no evidence of me doing that at the time. And she just pulled it out just to annoy me further. I don't know what that was about, honestly, but I remember these things vividly. There was another time where, oh, this was so cruel. This was so cruel for my young Asperger's brain. We worked on a paper mache project, okay? And we had like a 2-story house where we had these little figures standing here and there. I worked on this with my partner, and whoever got to keep the paper mache project was determined via a coin toss. I know, that's so harsh. How can you put the decision, which felt like life or death for me, of who gets to keep the paper mache structure, down to a coin toss? I mean, if the person who loses gets a fair bit of the deal, like when you toss a coin in football to decide who kicks off at the start of the half, the losing person gets to kick off later, why would you do this for a project that we worked so hard on for the last week? Anyways, I lost the coin toss because, well, luck, and I cried so heavily. I did not get to keep a single remnant of the project we had worked so hard on over the last week. And it destroyed me inside, it destroyed me. Now I don't care about that project. But back then, it was soul-crushing. It was horrible to have taken my piece of hard work and given it away like that. Or at least a share of it, because I worked on half of it. And these experiences were so terrible. The reason I remember them now is because they must have induced some kind of trauma of rejection. And I still hold that trauma today. Like if I'm told I got replaced or something, like when I was promised something unfairly, which happened last week, it sends a sharp shiver down my spine like this. And I kind of go wide-eyed and silent for a while, and I have to pace around and take a moment out. And then I have to pathologically justify it in my brain for about 10 to 20 minutes, like a soft form of mental torture, while I process the trauma and get it out of my system. And I'm telling you this to showcase you the reality of having Asperger's syndrome and the negative impacts it can have on my brain. Now, of course, I don't show any of this out loud anymore. I'm an adult. I have certain behaviours and standards to adhere to, but it doesn't mean the problem has fully gone away. I may have overcome about 95 to 99% of the problems of having Asperger's syndrome, but the days of being the biggest crier, losing it, being violent, have still kind of stuck with me like 1%, because having Asperger's syndrome is a lifelong journey. It's a trait of me. It's a characteristic. It never goes away. The only thing I can manage is how I portray my emotions. And now, I don't portray negative emotions that may cause a scene anymore. I must conform to the society we live in today. Actually, that sounds kind of negative. I must do it for the betterment of my friends and family who surround me, so that I do not worry them, because I've noticed with human nature, if there's something wrong with someone or they're in pain, the other people will panic and they'll rush towards them. And this is the reason I don't display my pain or problems anymore, because it only affects those around me in a negative way. Now, of course, yes, I do have people to talk to. There are moments where this is appropriate. I'll talk to my mum and dad about it. I'll talk to my friends about it. Luckily, I have a good secure attachment style which allows me to open up in such a way, because my parents did a really good job of raising me. And for that, I'm forever grateful. And I think I could not have done a better job at managing my Asperger's syndrome. If you also have Asperger's syndrome and learned something from my journey here, please comment down below your experience and how this may have helped you and realize who you are. Thank you so much for listening. Take care and see you in the next video.